there's a confidentiality and media contacts policy within the Department of Justice guidelines that says specifically that DOJ personnel should not voluntarily disclose a photograph of a defendant unless it serves a law enforcement function. It appears that what you did was a violation of that policy, unless you can express a clear law enforcement purpose for having done that.
The simple law enforcement purpose is to show America that we investigate any individual who commits a crime, especially those in positions of public trust.
Senator Chris Van Hollen zeroed in on something that most Americans might have missed at first glance, but that cuts right to the heart of justice, fairness, and the credibility of our institutions. He pressed FBI Director Kash Patel about something as simple but as deeply symbolic as tweeting out a photo of a Wisconsin judge being led away in handcuffs.
Senator Merkley raised on the Constitution because, as you know, in response to a question that the president was asked about whether he had to comply with the Constitution, he said, and I'm quoting, "I don't know." So it is important that we reaffirm everybody's obligation to comply with the Constitution, and I appreciate that was your answer broadly to the question asked by Senator Merkley. But you don't dispute the fact, and I'm quoting here from the Supreme Court opinion in Reno v. Flores, where Justice Scalia wrote, and I quote, "It is well established that the Fifth Amendment entitles aliens to due process of law in deportation proceedings," end of quote. You don't dispute
I don't dispute that.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure, for the record, we understand that, because as you well know, the federal courts have found that there have been gross violations to date of many individuals' due process rights. Let me ask you a question about Judge Dugan, and I'm not going to get into about Judge Dugan, who was arrested, taken out in handcuffs from her courtroom. You agree that as director of the FBI, you should lead by example, right?
Try to.
Okay. Well, there's a confidentiality and media contacts policy within the Department of Justice guidelines that says specifically that DOJ personnel should not voluntarily disclose a photograph of a defendant unless it serves a law enforcement function or unless the photograph is already part of the public record in the case. Clearly, Judge Dugan's photograph was not already part of the public record in the case. So it appears that what you did was a violation of that policy, unless you can express a clear law enforcement purpose for having done that.
The simple law enforcement purpose is to show America that we investigate any individual who commits a crime, especially those in positions of public trust.
But do you agree with the presumption of innocence in the U.S. system?
Absolutely. As a public defender, that's what I fought for years. Well, but that's different than this.
No. But Mr. Director, this is one of the reasons why that guideline is there, so people, especially the director of the FBI, doesn't announce to the country that somebody's already been found criminally liable when they haven't. She hasn't, has she?
But that's not what we said, that she was criminally liable. We said she was arrested and showed it.
Yeah, we know she was arrested, but the issue is the photograph. I'm asking you, going forward, I hope as the leader of the FBI, you will comply with the guidelines of the FBI that everybody else is expected to follow.
I believe I have, and I will going forward.
Well, this seems like a direct violation of this guideline.
I guess we're in disagreement, Senator.
Well, unless you can tell me why that really serves a law enforcement function, so you're going to send out pictures of everybody that's arrested?
Lots of people that are arrested have pictures sent out.
I'm asking you as director of the FBI, is that going to be your policy, just to start saying?
No, we do it on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah. Well, the guidelines make clear that I think any normal interpretation of this suggests it's a violation. Look, we're a budget committee, an appropriations committee. We want to find a way to make sure that we properly resource the men and women who work at the FBI. I think that is a common goal, I hope. And I do, just, Mr. Chairman, again, in closing, I understand you want to proceed, just so that we keep things going, but it is kind of hard to proceed without any budget.
I don't take you as critiquing our having a hearing.
No,
You're
that's-
pleased to have a hearing, and I wish we had more to deal
I know
with
you
than
do.
we do.
I do.
And
Now, let's stop here and really unpack why this matters. In America, we live under a system built on the presumption of innocence. You are innocent until proven guilty. That's not just a legal technicality, it's one of the bedrock principles of our democracy. And that principle isn't optional. It doesn't matter if you're a small-town clerk or a sitting judge, every single person is entitled to due process. That's exactly why the Department of Justice has long had guidelines restricting how law enforcement officials can release photographs of defendants. It's to prevent the government from unfairly branding someone guilty in the eyes of the public before they've had their day in court. Because once that photo is out there, the handcuffs, the mugshot, the damage to a person's reputation is instant and often irreversible, regardless of the outcome of the trial. So when Director Patel tried to defend his decision by saying it was about showing America that the FBI investigates anyone who commits a crime, even people in power, Senator Van Hollen cut right through the spin. Because there's a crucial difference between investigating wrongdoing and publicly shaming someone before guilt has been established. That's exactly what these guidelines are designed to protect against. Think about it this way. If the FBI director starts picking and choosing which arrests to publicize, especially when those arrested are political figures or judges, it raises a dangerous question. Is the goal justice or is the goal spectacle? Is this about enforcing the law or about flexing political muscle? And here's where it gets even more troubling. Patel brushed aside the concern, essentially saying, we'll do it on a case-by-case basis. But who decides those cases? Him. Which means the FBI director is putting himself in a position to weaponize optics. And if we've learned anything from the past few years, it's that when law enforcement looks political, public trust in democracy takes another devastating hit. This isn't just about one judge in Wisconsin. It's about whether Americans can trust that justice is blind and fair, or whether it's being turned into a photo op for political gain. And Senator Van Hollen was absolutely right to press on this, because at the end of the day, our democracy doesn't just depend on laws being enforced. It depends on the perception that those laws are enforced fairly, without bias, and without grandstanding. So here's the takeaway. What Patel did might seem small to some, but it speaks volumes about leadership and accountability. In a moment when Americans already distrust institutions, the last thing we need is an FBI director blurring the line between justice and politics. And that's why hearings like this matter. They shine light on actions that might otherwise go unchecked. And they remind us that oversight is not optional. It's the very mechanism that keeps our democracy honest. If you believe in accountability, in fairness, and in protecting the presumption of innocence, then this is exactly the kind of exchange you should be paying attention to. Because if we let these small cracks go unchallenged, the whole system can begin to crumble. So what do you think? Should the FBI be allowed to release photos like that? Or was Van Hollen right that Patel crossed the line? Drop your thoughts below and make sure you stay tuned, because this conversation about fairness and accountability is only just beginning.